So my current commission is a reproduction of a small cupboard, often referred to as an ombre or a livery cupboard. These pieces date back to at least the 15th to 16th centuries. You see them in a lot of books on Gothic furniture, period furniture, medieval furniture. Essentially, it was a small cupboard used mostly to store food, but it's essentially the predecessor of the modern cupboard, kitchen cabinet, bookcase, anything like that. What you'll find about these cupboards is that, for the most part, pretty universally, they all had pierced and carved doors, and the piercings would have been backed with some kind of fabric, and that was to keep bugs and vermin out. And sometimes the stiles would have piercings, carved piercings in them as well. And these were for ventilation, so you could get air into the cabinet, so things wouldn't get nasty and moldy. This is a smaller version, so this one's not going to have any carving or piercing in the stiles, but the door will have carving and piercing in it. One other thing that you often see, not quite universally, but in just about all of the antique versions that you'll see, most of them have some kind of decorative element on the rail and the stiles. Usually this is in the form of a crease molding or some type of scratched in bead detail. Because as you can see, this is going to be a pretty plain, boring front without any type of decorative element. And if you're familiar at all with furniture from the 15th, 16th, and 17th centuries, they decorated almost every part of the piece with some type of molding or carving or what have you. So today what I want to do is go over how to make a simple bead, scratch bead type molding in these stiles and rail to kind of give the front of the piece a little bit more visual interest. Now, when we think about making period moldings, the first thing that usually comes to mind are molding planes. And these were pretty typical in period shops from the late 17th, early 18th century and onward, until the Industrial Revolution, when moldings were made by big machines. The most common style were what we call hollows and rounds, and you have one concave profile, one convex profile, and with a set of these of different sizes, you could make pretty much any molding profile you can think of. There were also complex molding planes that had that would cut a single profile. But when you go back in the furniture record, back into the 15th century, the 16th century, and the early 17th century, you don't see molding planes too much. And most of the moldings, they're there, they existed. But a lot of the moldings can be made with something much simpler, sometimes known as a scratch stock. Now, most scratch stocks are fairly simple affairs. They're most frequently found shop made, like these two here. This one had a simple OG profile, but they can be made to cut some fairly complex profiles as well. This is one that I made for a joint stool. By the 19th century, you could find them ready-made. This is a model made by Lee Valley that is a copy of one made by Edward Preston in the 1800s. This is the one I'm going to be using today with a small single point cutter. It's going to be a very simple scratched in molding, but it's going to make a world of difference in the face frame of that cupboard. So I've set this fence to about a ½ inch from the point. Now if you're making your own, this becomes the fence here, so you just want to set your blade distance away from that fence, since the fence isn't adjustable. And I just hold it with a little wood screw there that pinches the blade in a kerf in the wood block, and the blade is set a certain distance away from the fence. This one has a sliding fence, so you can put the blade in and adjust the fence. And again, this is adjusted to about a ½ inch. Now to start this, you just want to kind of drag, sort of like a marking gauge, drag that point or drag that blade behind. And the motion is, as I progress through, I'm going to slowly tip this upright. So I'm going to start by just making gentle cuts. And with each pass, I can go a little deeper until I'm scraping full depth. And this is a scraping cut, so essentially you're going to use it just like a scraper. Now, the one thing that you'll notice, we're not really too clogged up yet, with these scratch stocks, and it happens whether it's a homemade one or a commercial one, you're going to get little shavings kind of clogging up in there, so you might have to just take a little knife or a pin or something and clean them out once in a while. And the beauty of these, unlike a molding plane, is you can push them or pull them. So depending on how the grain is running and treating you, you can change direction to get a cut just the way you want. Now, because these stiles are already cut to length, I have to do these in sections and just do an area at a time and then move the clamp. So I'm doing the lower portion, and I can go all the way up to the clamp, and then I'll just move the clamp and do another section. Something else that you really can't do with a molding plane because it has a sole, and you need that area before and after. You really want to make a complete through pass. With the scratch stock, not a big deal. I can stop right there and I can move on. Now each of these stiles is actually going to get a double on each side. So I'll turn this around and do the other side, and then we'll move the fence and we'll do another round. So now I'll move the fence. We're going to move it 1/4 of an inch out, so that now will be 3/4 of an inch to the point. And we'll do it again. After I finished scratching in the moldings, I sawed out the feet, glued up the face frame with hide glue, and set it aside to dry overnight. The next day I trimmed the extra length from the stiles and glued the face frame to the case using hide glue, aligning the feet flush with the bottom of the case and making sure to keep the door opening square. Once the hide glue had dried overnight, I planed the face frame flush with the top of the case and then flush with the side of the case. And here's the final result. The shadow lines created by the scratch molding really do make a subtle but noticeable difference in the front of an otherwise flat, boring surface, especially when viewed in a raking light, such as the light from an afternoon sun coming through a nearby window.